Hi, everybody. It's Danny Parkins and Andrew Fillipponi with Spencer Ray producing on First and Pod. It's been an interesting week. How are you, Pony?
I'm good. In some ways, not so good in others. I watched Paul Skeens, the greatest pitcher ever made by a man and woman, go 7 shutout, no hit innings, in fact, 11 strikeouts, and get pulled after 7 innings.
With only 99 pitches.
Yeah, so that was the bad part of it. But, everyone gets on my case because I hitch my wagon to guys that turn out to not be stars like Kenny Pickett. And I have been saying before this guy pitched a single inning in the major leagues that he will go down as one of the greatest of all time. And so I feel great about that prediction. That's probably one of my best ones.
Well, I mean, he was the number 1 pick in the draft.
Okay. And there were seam heads out there saying that Dylan Crew should have been the number 1 pick.
No, that's true. That's true. Just pitchers, he's unbelievable. There's just volatility, man. I see it with Strasburg, saw it with Mark Pryor. There's an injury coming, but I gotta say, he's unbelievable. He's with Livy Dunn. He's got 8 figures. He seems to be winning at this game of life. Cheers to Paul Skeens.
But I think he would consider me a friend, or maybe an acquaintance is a better way of putting it. I think I'm.
You think if you guys were both at the same restaurant in Pittsburgh at the same time, would he give you a head nod, say "What's up, Pony," or walk past you?
He would walk past me. I would have to introduce myself in person, I think, even though we've been on video interviews before. But I think once that happened, I think we would get along swimmingly. And I'm anticipating that'll happen sometime soon.
I can't wait for that for you. I got to say, I don't know that this is why people are tuned in to First.
Well, you asked me how I was doing. That was your mistake. I mean, did you?
I'm sorry. I didn't know that your mood was tied to the performance of a baseball game during the day. Actually, I did know that because I know who you are. I'm sorry about that. Were you at the game?
I was not. It was in Milwaukee, Danny. If I was at the game in Milwaukee, I'd be driving to your house right now to hang out and watch the Pirates and White Sox this weekend.
Yeah, good point. Why aren't
interesting
you doing that,
is totally downplaying your week. It was historic. You filled in for Colin Cowherd. And this is the best part about you filling in. I think what you want to do in these situations is you want to have something memorable. You want to make an impact. You want to make sure your fingerprints are felt. And this top 10 quarterback list that you made has the people like myself talking because you did not just rank 10 quarterbacks. You said, this is who I would start a franchise with. That was your way of saying it. If all these quarterbacks were available, it was a free market, how would they get ranked by teams? And so you did 10 on the show. So you will go through that 10 again. We will critique the 10. And then I will add on an extra 10, 11 to 20. And then you can cut my 10 to ribbons after that.
Sounds good. And, we're doing this show for the masses, and we're doing it for our friend Nick Wright, who's our number 1 First and Pod listener. So don't hold back on any critiques or things to make fun of me for my appearance on the Herd, because we know that that's at least why one person is listening to this pod. So feel free. Do not feel like you need to hold back.
You said something. I read something about your hosting appearance that I did not know about. And after I found out about it, it completely explained what I saw watching you. And it actually I thought you did a tremendous job, but I'm even more impressed by the job that you did, because I find it incredibly awkward that you're giving this spiel on Dak Prescott and Skip Bayless is like going through his change and making sure he has his phone and everything and making small talk with people within feet of you. I did not know that the undefeated set was undisputed set was that close to the Cowherd set, where they were pretty much in the same room as you.
It's not pretty much in the same room. They're in the same room. Now, it's a big room, and they walk out like respectfully, but like
if an engineer came into my radio studio while I was hosting the show, it would make me feel awkward. I can only imagine what that must have felt like for you, dude.
Skip Bayless, Rachel Nichols, and Keyshawn Johnson. That's a pretty big trio. And
I would have shit my pants, man.
Dude, I mean, I was pretty tense. Like, that was not my loosest monologue ever. But I got through it.
Did you know that going in? Did they warn you that they were going to be right there?
No.
Oh, God. I would have wanted a heads up on that.
I mean,
I think I would have been like the 04 Red Sox. I think I would have taken a couple of shots before going on just to loosen myself up.
Yeah, I did not. I mean, they prepped me for everything, but I did not realize that it was one room. Like, no idea. It was crazy. It was a truly crazy experience. But really cool. And those guys are amazing. Like his team is, I said it in that article, but like they are a well-oiled machine, man.
They should be. It's one of the biggest shows in sports media.
Yeah. And it's the only show in sports media that operates like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
If you want to say like First Take's a bigger show or whatever, fine. With audience size, it is, at least television audience size. I wasn't on the radio portion of Colin's show, but it's 3 hours solo. No one else does that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I've been saying it's the hard, and I'm not saying it to pat myself on the back, but I guess I kind of am, and I'm not even ashamed of it. Like, it's the hardest job in sports opinion. Like, in sports commentary, that's the hardest job, because the other shows are debate shows or panel shows or chemistry shows, or, you know, there's some scripting and like Van Pelt's One Big Thing or the intros on PTI. Like, none of it's scripted. It's 3 hours and it's solo. Yeah, you play off of your news anchor, and Ashley Brewer was great, but that's just for a brief segment of Herdline every hour. And, you know, I had one guest an hour, which is obviously super helpful, but it's monologuing on national TV, and in his case, also national radio, to a one shot of a camera for 3 hours. It's crazy. It's a crazy.
And I thought you really stepped your clothing up for this as well,
that.
which you should have. I mean, it's Colin Cowherd's show we're talking about.
I brought my best button downs. All right. So yeah, so what they said was like, you know, so especially this time of year, like top of the second hour, like lists, rankings, things like that, they work, and you don't have to spend a ton of time on it. And not in terms of like spend time on the prep, but in terms of like on the air, it's just like something to do, something to give. People are interested. It leads the conversation. And I was like, well, top 10 quarterbacks, top 5 teams, top 5 quarterbacks, whatever. It's like, I want to do it with a hook to it. I think that opens it up for more debate and discussion and subjectivity, but it's at least also something that like I haven't seen him do before, right? Herd hierarchy is ranking teams. Like I've seen him do his list of quarterbacks. So I want to do something different. So I said, it's if everyone was available, like you said, you were doing a draft because you were starting a team and you're trying to win this year, but you're also trying to win for the next decade. So age, contract, all of that stuff matter.
Okay. I don't, that one little caveat in there, I hate.
What?
I hate the one where you like try to then emphasize this year. Are you starting? Is it to start a franchise with, or are we putting way more importance in 2024 or not? What do we?
No. It's if all of the quarterbacks were available.
Okay.
And it was a draft, but this is your guy for a decade.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I thought it was. All right.
Yeah. But this is your guy for a decade. So like, I was like, so like Stafford and Rodgers, you can't draft. Because
we'll see if they make it into 11 through 20. But yes, you cannot put them in the top 10.
Of course. But like I don't think you're gonna have Aaron Rodgers 10 years from now. You know,
right.
So he didn't make my top 10. But anyway, okay. Patrick Mahomes was number 1, and I used your line of John Elway for the Hall of Fame. You just stand up and say John Elway.
Which it's not even an original thought. Like, I'm not the only person that's referenced that before. But I was just on Nick's side with this. I thought that was a perfect chance to mention First and Pod. I thought there was your opening to get the First and Pod mention out there. And as Nick Wright pointed out in our text, in our group text, the FS1 audience knows this show. You're not speaking Mandarin to them there. You're not speaking a foreign language. The show that comes on after the Herd references this great podcast all the time.
It was a huge success. It was the biggest platform that I'd ever been on. It was a career bucket list achievement that I'm hoping I will be able to parlay into more appearances and more things. And actually, I got booked today. I will be a guest on Colin Cowherd's show tomorrow on Friday. So I'm very excited about that. Friday, July 12th, depending on when you're listening to this. But the great failure of the trip was not plugging First and Pod. It was a huge oversight, and I apologize. I got nothing more to say.
Thank you. I hear about Rick Bucher's podcast. Can you mention the podcast that you do one time?
I know. It's a bad job. It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
But yeah, I have no issue with Mahomes. I think that there's a chance that this specific way of asking the question, I do think that there's one quarterback out there who I think can flip it because of the age gap and go to number one and knock Mahomes.
Well, I assume then that's the guy that I had 4 for you, but we'll get there. But 2 for me was Josh Allen, and I know you disagree with that. But I simply think he's the second best player in football. And he is in his prime. He has massive production without every infrastructural advantage around him that Mahomes has. Like, his playoff numbers are worse, obviously, but his regular season statistics, including win-loss record, over the last 4 seasons, 60-plus game sample, is remarkably close to Mahomes. He's second in a bunch of categories to Mahomes. So, and he's ahead of him when you combine rushing touchdowns, with pure scoring. So I know you disagree, but to me, Josh Allen is a clear 2.
It's not like it's not one that I want to fight you on. Let me ask you this question right now. If Josh Allen never wins a Super Bowl and he keeps at this rate and he'll start to taper off into his 30s and probably the rushing stats will go down as he gets a little bit older.
Yep.
Would you say right now on your all-time quarterback rankings that he is tracking to be better than Troy Aikman and Ben Roethlisberger?
Why did you pick those 2?
Because I feel like your argument with Allen is mostly look at all the production, look how gigantic his numbers are. His touchdown production, his rushing stats are undeniable. He has not been to a Super Bowl, and this is the prime of his career. So he's probably like, he's not obvious, like among quarterbacks that haven't won it. Like, I'm sorry, just because of how much better his passing stats were relative to his peers. Like, he's not going to get to the Marino level of like greatest quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. I don't think. If he never wins one, but keeps this up, he will not pass Marino, in my opinion. But
I agree with that. I mean,
where would you rank him among the guys who are like, they're Hall of Famers, they've won Super Bowls, but they're not like in the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Joe Montana pantheon of quarterbacks?
Yeah, I okay. That now I understand what you're saying. Like, it's tough for me to say that though, like, because he's 28 years old. So, like, does he get to Super Bowls and lose? Does he have no big playoff runs? Is it like that's going to be
what
tough
if he never gets to one? And like, among great quarterbacks, the analogs are like Phillip Rivers and Dan Fouts.
Well, right. Rivers then is the one that came to mind for me immediately. That would hurt him tremendously. I do not expect that to be his narrative. That would hurt him tremendously. But I try to be fair and evaluate this irrespective of team and coaching around him. Like, I used this when I was talking about Purdy on the show. Like, when I had Schlereth in. Like, if Purdy was in Buffalo and Allen was in San Francisco, does anyone believe that Purdy would be able to put up the offensive production statistics or the winning that Josh Allen has put up in Buffalo? I think the answer to that is no. And does anyone believe that Allen would win less or produce less than Purdy does in San Francisco? I assume the answer to that is no, because we all know with our eyes that this dude is way more physically gifted. So the question is about starting a franchise. I don't know who my coach is. I don't know who my line is. I don't know who my, receivers are, my defense, or the conference that I'm in. It's just, who is the guy that individually balls out the most? So, he is more talented than Troy Aikman. He is. Troy Aikman, what was his career high for touchdowns? 28? It's a different era. I understand that. But, Aikman's a Hall of Famer. He's got 3 rings. But Josh Allen is more talented than Troy Aikman is. I think that Josh Allen, if he was on, behind Larry Allen, handed to Emmitt Smith, throwing to Irvin, I think he would win. I don't believe that his talent is keeping them from winning at the highest level. I don't believe that. I know a lot of people do because of the turnover numbers last year. I do not believe that. Anyway, let's go through the list. This is where you guys really got on me. My Wi-Fi was not working for the first 90 minutes of my flight home from LA. And I when I connected, I had 31 texts. 27 of them were from Nick, Pony, and our good friend Mike Meltzer, just critiquing the hell out of the Fox Sports 1 appearances. And half of those were about quarterback number 3, Justin Herbert. This is the eye test.
Yeah, and the results never matter. And I say it to you after every Chargers game they lose where his numbers are not great during the season on this podcast. And I always predict when we get to the offseason, none of this is going to matter. And you're still going to have him rated out as one of the best quarterbacks. And you just tacitly say, yeah, you're right. None of this does matter. They lost to the Cowboys in prime time. They're on a 4-game losing streak. He hasn't thrown more than 240 yards in any of these games, but I just love this guy. And he gets this double standard that no one else in the league does from you. It's so bizarre.
Okay. No one in NFL history has had more passing yards through 4 seasons than Justin Herbert. Okay. In terms of, this is not a guy that doesn't produce. This is not a guy that I see him chuck the ball down the field. I see him beat you surgically and dink and dunk and have 14 play drives. I've seen him have a bunch of different play callers and coaches. I've seen them lose games because of crazy clock mismanagement by Anthony Lynn. I've seen him have Brandon Staley, who lost all semblance of an identity for the team. I've seen him have injuries to star players on both offense and defense. I believe that guy is the 3rd most talented quarterback in the world.
Okay, but it's not all based on talent. He's won 0 playoff games. You ranked him ahead of a 2-time MVP and the only guy to beat Mahomes in a playoff game when it mattered. Here's why I think you're full of it. You're telling me right now that you would trade Caleb Williams for Justin Herbert?
Well, yes.
Yes, because you're saying you're starting a franchise. I'm shocked by that. With the way you talk about Caleb Williams and your expectations for the Bears, that would actually make me think that if Justin Herbert were the Bears quarterback, you would expect them to go to the Super Bowl.
I think Justin Herbert is better than Caleb Williams right now. Yes.
But it's not right now. This is 10 years. What
you said about the Super Bowl this year?
No, you were right. But I'm saying I'm shocked that with what you think Caleb Williams can be, you would still put Justin Herbert ahead of him. I'm stunned by that.
Well,
you think Williams might be Mahomes 2.0? Herbert can't friggin' beat Mahomes, man. He can't.
It's a team game.
Okay. And you're saying none of that's on him?
I don't think most of it is on him. No, I do not. I do not believe the majority of that is on him.
Do you think that your opinion is shared by most GMs? If 32 GMs had an opportunity to take either Burrow or Herbert, you think most would take Herbert because of the eye test thing?
Yes.
I do not believe that at all. This should have been a topic. Oh my God. You should have asked Eric Mangini that question.
Yeah, I do believe that.
Whew.
I brought the takes, buddy.
Wow.
I didn't know that was so polarizing. I really didn't. Number 4, CJ Stroud. This is your guy who you would say could be number 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he has an MVP season, which I think he can, and if they were to beat Kansas City in a playoff game, they'd be an underdog, but I don't think it's completely out of the question. They're one of the top contenders, in my opinion. If he were to do that and, smite the giant, if you will, and beat Mahomes, then I think that there would now become a conversation about those two quarterbacks being compared to one another. And I don't really know. I guess Burrow and Jackson would have a case too if they were to go through Kansas City and get to a Super Bowl. In Allen, and I just can't fathom Herbert doing it, but that's okay. Given
So
what Stroud did in his
hold on a second though. Just one thing. Again, the Purdy Allen question, but we'll do Herbert and Mahomes. If Justin Herbert's on Kansas City for the last 5 years, you think the Chiefs have just won a significantly less amount of football games?
No, I mean, I don't think that that's significantly less. I don't think that they've won significantly less, but I don't think that they have 3 Super Bowls, and I don't think they've gone back to back. No, I don't.
How much worse individually do you think he is? 5%, 10%?
Than Mahomes?
Yeah.
I think he's significantly worse. I think it's like 25 to 30%, maybe more than that.
No.
I think if Mahomes is on the Chargers and Herbert is on the Chiefs, I think the Chargers are beating the Chiefs at least once in the playoffs with Mahomes.
Okay.
With all those weapons you talked about and their defense and stuff, why not?
Oh, again, Mahomes is better than everybody. He's the most talented dude we've ever seen to it. I don't think that Herbert is that much less talented than him. It's not 25%. Number 5 quarterback to start a franchise with, Lamar Jackson. I just felt like the youngest 2-time MVP ever, even though I would worry about what happens to his game, like if he could take more jumps in the passing game, and when the athleticism does wane. The athleticism isn't waning anytime soon. And I actually think he's going to have the best passing season of his career this year. Just with the amount of attention that his running game still commands and his second year in a dominated friendly quarterback friendly offense. I think Lamar's going to have the best best regular season passing numbers of his career. He won't win another MVP, but because I think people are now going to start using like his playoff failures against him in the regular season for those types of awards. But statistically, I think he's going to do great passing the ball this year.
So let's lump this in with your number 6 guy, Burrow, because I was surprised that you put Jackson ahead of Burrow. I think you have, I don't think it's widely held. I think you have this concern that this hand injury with Burrow is one that is going to continue to affect him this year. And he might not be the same again because of this hand injury, that it's like
dude, I think that Burrow doesn't have top end physical traits. He's got top end between the ear traits, Brady-esque type stuff. But if he loses 5 to 10% of the zip on the ball that already wasn't one of the strongest arms in the NFL, and he's not that mobile, I do think it matters for him. Yes, but Burrow came in at number 6.
So you would have made the Nick Saban mistake then. You would have gone with Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees as well at that point with his arm injury and his lack of other traits.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably, yeah. I thought Jamarcus Russell was going to be good.
Here's my issue with Jackson and Baltimore for a second. I was talking to a former NFL offensive lineman actually about this very topic this week, reacting to your rankings. And his point was, why Derrick Henry and not Stephon Diggs? Why bring in someone that already helps you do what you already do well? You could get Gus Edwards to get you 4.5 yards per carry.
Well, they didn't give him the ball in the playoffs.
What's that?
They didn't give him the ball in the playoffs.
Gus Edwards?
Yeah, they didn't run the ball.
Well, right, but I'm saying, okay, but even more to the point, I think you've got to get teams to not sell out to stop the run, whether that's Lamar Jackson, the running backs back there, or whatever. You need receivers that are going to keep the safeties honest. And they didn't do that. So I agree with what you're saying. Like, you would think that a second year in an offensive system would make him better. But I don't think they really made the personnel for what would get them to the next level better this offseason. It's Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and keeping your fingers crossed that Mark Andrews is healthy again.
Yeah. No, I mean, Diggs has some personality stuff that obviously, I mean, Houston with the money that they gave him, maybe that was something that scared Baltimore off, that they weren't willing to invest with him in that way. But I agree. We've been calling for Lamar to get more offensive weapons in the passing game for years. Then I put Caleb at 7. You know what I think of him as a talent, but also you get the full length of the rookie contract. So, like, this is where
I thought it was low for you. I could not believe how low you put him on this list.
Well,
cheaper, more years. You think he's going to be great. You think he's got the
I do
generational gene.
I do all of the, like, so Stroud, it's only 1 year less of the rookie deal, and he did it as a rookie. The top 3 guys to me are established superstar talents. And then Lamar and Burrow are young enough and have accomplished enough that, you know, there's a possibility that Caleb isn't good. There's no chance that those other guys aren't good. So I think that those top 6 deserved the respect for it before a dude who had never played a game before. But I think that if this actually was a draft, I think that there's a chance that Caleb goes higher. I don't know where Lamar would go. Like under the 10-year window, and he's already been paid. I think there's a wide range of outcomes. I think that there are some GMs that would have had Lamar, 4, 5, or 6. And I think there's some GMs that would not have Lamar in the top 10.
I'm just picturing, because obviously Chicago is such a great football town. I'm just picturing what the reaction will be in that town. We know what yours would be. If Caleb Williams has the first 5 years of his career that are identical to Justin Herbert, where he is passing Danny Parkins' eye test every week, but there are no playoff wins at all to show for it. And if you get through the entire rookie contract and there are 0 playoff wins, will Danny say, well, wait a minute, this is actually great because we found our quarterback, even though we just frittered away the point in his career where we should have such an advantage over the rest of teams because we're paying this great quarterback nothing.
Well, you'll be furious at the franchise, but not at the quarterback.
Right. So if it's nearly identical and they blow a 25-plus point lead in a playoff game.
That was a bad moment.
Yeah.
That was his LeBron, JJ Barea.
But it doesn't get held against him with you. A guy that went to the Super Bowl and beat Mahomes comes in 3 spots lower from the same exact draft. Oh.
Number 8.
8 is Dak Prescott, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is where I thought it got really hard. Like, Dak's about to get paid huge, but I know that Dak is good. Like, I know he's good. He was the second for the MVP last year. He's only 30 years old. He has advantages in that he's had an offensive coach, but I don't think the coach is that good. He has a true number 1 receiver, but not a tremendous amount of depth. Like, I was not a Dak guy 2 years ago. I was not a Dak guy a year ago. I wasn't a Dak guy going into this past year. We talked about it. But this past year, I'm floored with how he executed that high volume passing, like 600 pass attempt style offense. I mean, they led the league in scoring, man. Like, he proved me wrong. He made me a believer this year. He really did.
And then 9 is Jordan Love, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And 10 is Trevor Lawrence.
Yep. And Jared Goff, Drake Maye, and Anthony Richardson were the 3 toughest to leave off. Hurts and Purdy would have come in after that.
Okay. So you're trying to steal my thunder now.
Well, no, I'm just talking about, like, the guys I considered. I did not consider Stafford. I did not consider Rodgers. And by the way, I know you did your 11 through 20. I almost think it's more interesting if you do your 1 through 10. But you prepped your 11 through 20, so go ahead.
I think we are clearly the Drake Maye podcast because I have Drake Maye 11. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Love that.
And I was eating dinner. Do you guys have Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza in Chicago?
No, we have real pizza.
But it is a Dan Marino pizza chain. Yeah, and I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, Drake Maye has something in common with Marino. And all of the analysts have said this about Maye. If he could have been drafted after his sophomore year at North Carolina, he would have, I don't know if he would have gone higher than 3 with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in last year's draft. But the tape from 2 years ago was much better than last year's tape. And that's the same thing that happened to Marino at Pitt. His junior year, he was like the best quarterback in the country. His senior year, he threw a bunch of interceptions, and there were questions about him and behind the scenes and everything else that I won't get into. But it's like he was penalized for playing an extra year. And I feel that way about Maye. The talent around him got worse. The offensive line wasn't great. Look at the amount of guys they had drafted off their line. And he tried to do too much. And so he got dinged for it. I happen to think that, going back to your guy Herbert, I see a lot of Herbert in Maye. And I see an ability, I think, to overcome the deficiencies that clearly New England has on the roster. So I put him at 11 because he's 21 years old?
And did you see the clip of him with Dable on Hard Knocks?
Loved it. He was the guy. He was the best at just being able to spit things out, and I love processors. So that's 11. 12, I think, is the guy that has the biggest gripe of being left out of your top 10, and that's Hurts. And I think that Hurts actually, I have more respect for Hurts actually now than I did thinking back on, like, after the Super Bowl. That was his apex for me because he went really throw for throw and play for play with Mahomes there. And I thought he was actually one of the MVPs of that game. Like, this guy's got nothing to be ashamed of. He played great in the biggest game. But look at last year. You can no longer say of the Eagles that the coach made him great, in my opinion. Do you still feel like Sirianni is an offensive genius? I don't. So it's not Kyle Shanahan making Brock Purdy great. I would not say that Sirianni is able to do that with Jalen Hurts.
So I've said this now on a couple of Fox Sports 1 shows, which is a sweet brag, but you know that he's had 10 if you count Sarkisian for one game in the title game, 9 if you just count for full seasons. He's had 9 play callers in 9 years, 4 years of college, 4 years of the pros, and this being Kellen Moore for his 5th year. He's had a different play caller every year he's played major football. That's insane. That is completely insane.
He went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They still won. They didn't win the division. They lost it to the Cowboys, but they were still a double-digit win team. They made the playoffs again. It was an epic collapse. We all get that. He's 25 years old? So, right? So, I mean, he's the modern quarterback. He's mobile. Well, he gives you double-digit rushing touchdowns a year.
When he loses some of the running stuff, do you believe that he's as pure of a passer because he did it in the Super Bowl? You're 100% right. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, a great running threat, a great offensive line. Like, I'm trying to say you draft him and you have no idea what's around him. If I put him in Indianapolis, if I put him in Pittsburgh, I put him in Jacksonville, I put him on just middle of the road team. Is he a top 10 quarterback by himself? I don't know that he is.
No, he's not. That's why I put Drake Maye ahead of him. But like Jordan Love did it
to not be in my top 10.
Jordan Love did it for a half season and got ranked ahead of him by you. Trevor Lawrence, you rip all the time for his inconsistency. You ranked him ahead of Jalen Hurts.
Yep. That's true. Listen, that is true. Hurts has been paid huge. Love hasn't yet. We'll see what he ends up getting paid. But there's,
I put Anthony Richardson 13.
Love it.
And so there's not a lot to go by with this dude because at Florida, he did not start a lot of games, and it was definitely not a linear thing. It's not as if he was, his best game was probably his first game of that season, actually, against Utah. But there's just like, if you put in a blender Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton and made a smoothie out of those two guys, I think it's Anthony Richardson. And so,
I mean, I'll just say this.
I think he's 22 years old.
Well, I'll just say this about Richardson. Based on what he did in college and what people said about him during the draft, I was like, this guy's an insane physical talent. You would be completely insane to play him his rookie year. And then they played him his rookie year, and he looked so much better than people had said that he was going to look in terms of.
I agree with that.
In terms
it
of
was not a lot of games, obviously, but in the he played what, a game and a half?
No, he played like 4 games, right?
Well, no, you're right, because he got injured in the second game against Houston, was out for a couple of games, came back and got hurt again. Yes, yeah. You're right.
Yeah. But he didn't look overwhelmed, and the plays that he made were not just one read, tuck, run. Like, he was going through progressions, he was hitting check downs, like, you know what I mean? Like, he did not look completely overwhelmed by playing in the NFL. And so then you add in the crazy athleticism. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I go Purdy 14 here. Here's why I have Purdy ranked ahead of some of the other guys we'll get to. I do think we need to at least acknowledge that if after Andy Reid, if Kyle Shanahan is the next best quarterback whisperer in football, if he is the one that is repeatedly saying, no, he's different than Garoppolo, he's different than Lance, I believe in this guy. He's not someone that's just a product of the system. He's not someone that I'm just getting by with. If he says that, then I have to at least put some stock into it.
I agree. I think that's totally reasonable. I probably would have had him ranked exactly the same. I think honestly, I think probably 13, 14, 15. I'm right with you.
So I got through most of your honorable mentions. This is where things get a little bit screwy. I put Bryce Young 15.
Okay, that's not right.
Why?
It's just pure conjecture. How do you have him ahead of Goff?
Well, wait a minute. What is Drake Maye?
Yeah, we haven't seen him fail.
Yeah, we just went over it. His last season at North Carolina, if that's all he had to go by, he would not have been a first-round pick.
But he's not okay. But he's bigger than Bryce Young with a stronger arm than Bryce Young.
Yep.
Like, the physical traits are better than Bryce Young's.
I just ranked Brock Purdy one spot ahead. Okay, I'll do the thing you like to do all the time. Are you telling me if Bryce Young was the 49ers quarterback going into this year, you don't think he could do a reasonable facsimile of what Purdy has done there? No way.
No way. Listen, man. I think that I said it on the show. I think that Kyle Shanahan is an outlier in this whole thing because I think that he's like Andy Reid. Every quarterback that ever played for Andy Reid has his best season with Andy Reid.
Understood. So my point is, if there are guys who play at an MVP level because of who they're around and who's coaching them, and that makes them great, you also have guys who, especially when they're a rookie at 21 years old, and they are in an offense where the best pass catcher is Adam Thielen at 33 years old. You have 3 offensive coordinators in one season. Your offensive line blows. You got to go pay Hunt from Miami like $70 million to come in and stabilize it. I'm just saying, at 22, even though I wasn't the highest on this guy, I'm not ready to give up on him yet. It's not Jamarcus Russell to me.
No, I don't think it is either. But Goff and Tua?
Those are the guys that I have next. I have Goff 16 and I have Tua 17.
So I don't get Bryce Young in front of either of them. So I don't know what
he's 7 years younger than Goff, and he's 5 years younger than Tua.
Okay.
And I hate to say this, like I
Cheaper.
think Tua does throw a better long ball than he gets credit for. And a lot of people, you've brought up like the left-handed thing where if you flip it and you watch him throw right-handed, which I think they did on Twitter, it looks way more natural. I don't honestly think from like, I know they both played at the same school, but I don't think there's a huge difference in like ability, what they can and can't do from Young to Tua. I really don't. They have similar builds.
That's fine. I guess listen, you're right. You're supposed to be doing this isolating, like irrespective of situation. And Tua has a great coach and great weapons, and Goff has a great play caller and a great line and good weapons. And Bryce Young has none of those things, and he's younger and cheaper. So I guess now I get the argument. I just do think that there is at least a pretty sizable percentage of a chance that Bryce Young is a bust. Not better than 50-50, but it's on the board that he's a bust.
Of course it is.
It's not for Goff or Tua. So that's why I would have had that in a different order. Like,
yeah, but we might have already seen the best of both of those guys.
Yeah, we might have. No, that's what I'm saying. It's a floor v ceiling argument, right? Like the floor on Bryce Young is certainly lower than those guys. Because
because he might not be a good quarterback.
Right. So that's what surprised me. That's it.
Okay, so 18 and 19, I took two of the Oklahoma quarterbacks and ranked them back to back. I went Mayfield 18 and I went Kyler Murray 19.
Yeah, your list is tougher than mine.
This is where we're at.
Yeah. So did you consider JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels?
Not really, even though I know you talked to that executive about McCarthy.
No. But I'm just saying. I'm just curious.
Baker's only 29 and Kyler's 26. And if your thing is starting a franchise and you're talking about 10 years, I think it's possible both of those guys play for another 10 years.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, Baker got himself off the mat big time last year. Let's not get it twisted. And if he repeats that season again, all of a sudden he's the next Kirk Cousins. If he spits out another 30 touchdown season, he becomes the guy who's not in the elite tier of quarterbacks, but you can count on him to play well, not great, but give your team a chance to make the playoffs every year.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And
then 20, I put Justin Fields.
Say again?
And then 20, I put Fields.
Ooh, I don't know. I would put McCarthy in front of Fields.
What?
Yeah. Dude.
What happened to you? Like, this is something that is based on you not watching games whatsoever. You were a Fields guy, the most exciting quarterback of your lifetime watching Bears football. You've said McCarthy basically a stick figure could have run that offense. You could have put like a cardboard cutout back there at Michigan.
What are your Pittsburgh people telling you about Fields' ability to get to the second and third read?
They're not saying great things about it.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. Did Michael Vick get to a lot of second and third reads?
No.
Was he a top 20 quarterback when he played based on his athleticism? Of course he was.
Yeah.
So that's what, I mean, I think that I've given up on the idea that Fields is going to be a great franchise quarterback. But I don't think while he's in his 20s, when he plays, he can't be a difference maker. I mean, I really believe this. I know, like, obviously the reading defenses and holding onto the ball for too long, that's a real problem with him. I'm not sure if you ask defensive coordinators, would you rather play Baker Mayfield or Justin Fields, that all of them would say Mayfield. I don't think they would.
Oh, listen, I think that Fields' athleticism is a is a complete nightmare for defensive coordinators. But starting a franchise for 10 years, he's not going to be Mike Vick athleticism for 10 years.
Yes, but you just said you'd put McCarthy ahead of him, who, when the season ended, you hated.
I don't know what to tell you, man. He hasn't failed yet.
Okay, well, either is Jaden Daniels, or like, and you didn't put them in your top 10. That's now the barometer of where you put people, like if they haven't failed.
Again, you're ranking 18, 19, 20. Your list is harder.
You consider Jared Goff. You could argue he failed with the Rams.
I mean, he also went to a Super Bowl.
I know, but I'm just saying, dude. You hated McCarthy, and you loved Fields.
I know. That's why these lists are fun. Debate them.
Right.
Share them with your friends. Do you have any other comments on Cowherd before we get out of here, please, quickly?
You know what? I don't want to get emotional.
Oh, stop.
No, seriously.
That's not what I'm looking for.
No, hold on. Give me a second here. So I was thinking about this, and I was proud that you were on the show and that I got to watch you, and that it really is, I think, like a career-making moment, that you are so highly thought of within our industry that you are now on a list that's less than a handful of people that host that show on TV. But I mean this, like, sincerely. There are like 4 or 5 things that I would say about you that I'm prouder of than that, for sure.
Your internet is crapping out as you're making this sentimental point.
Well, then we'll leave it there then.
I didn't hear anything that you said.
Well, I guess it's lost then.
You said you were proud of me, and there was a handful of people who have done it, and then I didn't hear another word that you said.
Well, then I guess it's lost forever, Danny. You'll never hear it now.
No. Start over.
No, I can't. I'm not going to do it. No, I gave you a shot. It was a one-take thing. It's gone.
Oh, my God. I have no idea what you said. I have no idea what he said. See, and this is the weird thing. God, that's so funny. So, I wrote the book with Ben Kaplan, my best friend since childhood, and we worked together on it very closely. We published the book. We did interviews about the book. And then he said something in an interview that he did that was so nice and so kind that he never once said to me in person or on the phone. He said it to the Chicago Tribune, and I read the quote when the article came out about us writing the book together. And I was like, dude, that's like the nicest thing you've ever, like, he's like, yeah, I can't say that to your face.
Well, then I guess that's what happened here.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Thank you to Spencer Ray, our producer. Subscribe, rate, review, First and Pod. Peace.